Okay, she be going every single night. Day and night on my mind, pushing you to vibe.
How's it going, everybody? This is Tyler Drapo. Hope you're having another great day, and welcome back to another video. Alright, so back in October when I was doing Gamer Month, I talked a little bit about video game collecting, particularly with what it is and why I personally like to do it. You know, like I said before, I've only been doing collecting video games as a real serious hobby since last April. And since then, I've gotten a very big collection for all four current PlayStation consoles that I have, ranging from the PlayStation 1, which I got in the middle of this stint, along with the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 4. It's a very fun activity if you're a part of the gaming community, but there are a lot of others that may have an interest in video games that might also want to get involved in it as well. Well, this is a little video about how you personally can get involved in video game collecting. So for this video, I'm going to be sharing you some tips on how you can get involved in video game collecting. You know, how you can start, where to look, and more importantly, how to do it wisely, because we're in a world right now where everything, in particular with video games, is getting extremely expensive. So you really need to be smart in regards to what you're doing. So these tips, I think, can help anyone that's interested in becoming a video game collector get involved in video game collecting and build up a massive video game collection of their own. So some people find this as more of an activity that they can get involved in right away. You know, somebody that's been an avid video gamer wakes up one day and says, oh, I want to be a video game collector, and just goes out, buys as many games as possible, and they do it almost every single day for the rest of their lives. No, that is not how video game collecting works. Here, it takes a lot of time and a lot of preparation along with a lot of strategy to be able to do this. Many video game collectors that I've seen personally on YouTube usually have some sort of plan in regards to how they are going to collect their video games. They usually talk a little bit about how much they would try to spend, you know, who they would go for in regards to, you know, like people and places that they can look to find games, and more importantly, they try to find avenues in regards to, you know, like certain PlayStations, Xboxes, and a whole bunch of other consoles to try to build up all their stuff in regards to, you know, like, you know, finding some of their favorite games, or maybe getting games that are extremely rare and are very popular nowadays. Well, there are a lot of ways where you can be able to navigate this like professional video game collectors usually do. And so the very first way to be able to do this is to start with what you know. I've seen a lot of video game collectors nowadays, you know, try to go right away into a console or some games that they don't have. Just try to spend on them right away and just, you know, like try to build up from there without realizing that, hey, they already have a certain console in their collection. Why not focus on that to start off? Yeah, that's exactly one of the problems with video game collecting. You just try to start off by going after one thing that you don't have right away. It really hurts you financial wise. Not everybody's just gonna wake up and say that they want to start video game collecting right away and just go straight to a video game store and start getting games that, you know, they don't have and may not be of real importance. No, that's not exactly how video game collecting works. Here, you need to have some sort of strategy to be able to navigate this. And usually, one of the easiest ways to do this is to start with what you know. So think about what video game console that you have right now. Do you have a PlayStation 1, a PlayStation 2, or a PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 like I do? If you have any one of those consoles at your home, that's the console that I would prefer that you start with. Start with trying to build up collections on those consoles before going elsewhere, because those are the only consoles that you have. And if you try to branch out way too early, you're going to risk losing a lot of money in doing so. Another thing is to try to find games that you personally like. You know, I've seen a lot of people try to find games that they don't have and they aren't really familiar to, and they try to get it right away, and then after playing for a little while and say, this is not as good of a game as I thought it would be. Well, that usually tends to be a pretty bad strategy. Here, you need to narrow it down to what is in your interest. For example, let's say you enjoy racing games. Well, that could be a genre that you can start out with. Start by narrowly focusing it on racing games, no matter if it's, you know, like NASCAR video games or even Gran Turismo video games, or maybe even, you know, like, you know, video games that involve driving, like Grand Theft Auto and Driver and all of that. Start out by narrowing it down to those categories, and after a little bit of time, try to build up from there. Maybe go to another avenue if you also have an interest in, let's say, you know, like first-person shooters, or maybe action games, or maybe even, you know, role-playing games. You always have to start out by going one genre of video game at a time. Everybody starts somewhere, and usually they start out with what they already have, and then try to build up with that from there. So if you have like a certain PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo console at home, don't try to see if you can get another console that you don't have right away and start building up a collection on that one. Start with what you already have. Start out with that particular PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, or any video game console you have, and try to build up on it from there. Try to build up with games that you personally enjoy playing, and only games that you know you're going to continuously play from time to time. And then once you do that, that's when it starts to become a lot easier to start collecting video games for other consoles from there on out. But that really only happens if you have a lot of money. And that's the next tip that I want to talk about here, is know your wealth. Nowadays, retro video games that are extremely popular, they are going to be extremely expensive. In fact, almost everything today in this world, including video games and video game consoles, are expensive. Particularly those big time classic video game consoles, like the Nintendo Entertainment Systems and all the Atari and the Sega consoles, along with modern day video game consoles, like the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, and all of that. Those are very high in prices, and they are going to be extremely hard to get, at least right away, or if they continue to become extremely popular, almost forever. And consoles aren't the only ones that are very expensive. There are a bunch of very popular video games as well, retro and modern, that are also extremely expensive. As I mentioned before, modern day video games for the PlayStation 5 or on the Xbox Series X, those are now usually ranging from anywhere between $60 to $70 on launch day. Now, those will typically go down after a little while, unless they stay relatively popular from time to time. But otherwise, they're going to be extremely expensive. You need to be smart with your money here. Try to find only games that are relatively worth the buck. If you try to go right away at a big time video game, like let's say for example a Grand Theft Auto game, or maybe even a popular PlayStation 1 game, like Chrono Trigger or Pop Out a Rapper, and you realize right away that it's heavily expensive, but you still spend it anyways, that's a lot of money that you are wasting right away on one game, when you could have used it to save a bulk of games, or 5 or 6 games just to start it out. So that being said, it's a really good idea for you to put a limit on how much you spend per month, or maybe even per week per se, if you want to be smart with your money. So usually it's good to have some sort of limit. For me personally, it's anywhere between $100 to $200 that I usually spend a month on video games. And of course, I also have to spend the rest of my money, of course, on groceries whenever my fridge is low, along with a few other stuff as well. So usually there are a lot of other things that you also have to worry about other than video games. So you gotta be mindful of that. So limit yourself anywhere between that range, $100 to $200 a month, or maybe slightly less than that, depending on your financial situation, all of that, if you are serious in getting into video game collecting. And stick with that limit, because as I said before, there are other things in your life that you also gotta worry about. And if you're limiting yourself to that range, you're gonna be able to find a lot more games that might be a whole lot cheaper than you think. And trust me, that is exactly what it was for me when I started out. When I started out video game collecting, I was able to find at least 6 to 8 games per purchase, all because I limited myself to a certain amount of money. And that's exactly what you should do. If you want to get the most amount of games that you can possibly can, always try to limit yourself and try to find the smallest price possible for any video game. Even if it's not a popular video game that is known to video gamers, hey, as long as it's very, very cheap, that's a game that's going to be worth your buck, especially if it's one that you personally know that you will enjoy playing. So as always, put a limit on what you purchase, and once you get further knowledge in video game collecting, the more games that you get, the more you're going to be able to save financially, because those games, when you start out small, is going to pay off dividends for you in the future. The third tip to be able to get into video game collecting is to find the places to go to find popular and retro video games. There are a whole lot of places in this world nowadays where you can be able to find popular video games, whether it's retro or modern day video games. Now obviously the game stores are really the most popular and probably the easiest method to do so. As I said before, there's literally a GameStop in almost every single town there is in this country. Of course, those are usually for more of the modern day games. And like I said before, those are the places where they have those ridiculously expensive new games that they have out there that are $60 to $70. But as I've said before, they usually drop over time, and they still have a lot of games there from those PS5 and Xbox Series X ones, along with the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One and other Nintendo's games that they have there that they have already been out for a long time, that they might be at a very low price. So try to find a way to start with those first. Start with those lower, more cheaper games in regards to all the consoles that have already been well known and have really worn out by age. And then once you get enough experience, once you have those consoles for all the newer games, then you can try to reach out and try to find those games at those local game stops. Now in regards to retro games, obviously the retro game stores are going to be your best friend. As I've mentioned before, there's literally a retro game store nearby for me, Digital Press Video Games in Springfield. That's where I usually do most of my video game hunting nowadays, where I try to find popular retro video games nowadays. But that's not the only place that there is here in my area. There's also a J2 Games in Clark, another Digital Press in Clifton, and I also mentioned a few times I've also been to Level 1 Games, Retro Classics Video Games, along with, a game store in Hopatcong, Gans Media. And there's also actually a video game store that's opening up sometime this summer in Parsippany, I believe. It's called Electric Town, I believe. I'm also going to look at that in the near future. But like I said before, wherever you are, always try to find the nearest retro video game store in your area, because there could be one a lot closer than you think. And again, retro game stores, those are usually your best friends when it comes to finding very cheap along with very popular retro video games, because you're not going to get those at modern day video game stores like GameStop and all that stuff. So always try to find a retro game store nearby that can allow you to find those retro video games along with those retro consoles, because chances are they're probably selling them at a much lower price than you think. Of course, there's also online shopping as well. They also have like eBay that you can use to be able to find some popular video games as well. And sometimes games on eBay are also slightly cheaper than the games at the retro game stores that there are in your area. So if you have to use online video game shopping as your method, hey, that's something that you can definitely do. I personally have not used it as much as I have when I started out video game collecting, but it's still a good resourceful method to find games that you may not be able to find at a retro or modern day video game store. Of course, one of the negatives that you have to remember in regards to that is because of how they send it. There's a possibility that whoever is sending it may not be careful with it, and they may end up damaging the package when it arrives, and as a result it may not play well, and as a result it may not look as pretty as it should be, or sometimes they may end up sending a fake as well. There's always a possibility that somebody that tries to sell you a game or console through eBay may end up selling you a scam copy of a game or a console, just so that way they can get themselves richer. Do not fall for it. Those are things that will easily make you lose money and maybe make you regret doing so. And of course, there's also relatives that you may have that are also into video games, friends, family, or maybe even people that you might know at work or something like that. There are some people there that are involved in video games that may not have a console or a game that's worth playing anymore, and they decide they want to get rid of it. Hey, if you are a diehard video gamer and you want an easy way to get video games, talk to some of them. Talk to some of your friends that are thinking about giving away some of their games or consoles, and ask them, if they can give you their games. That could be an easier way to be able to get games without having to spend any sort of money whatsoever. And it's a pretty popular method. I have known friends that have went out to find games from friends without having to go to retro game stores. So it's definitely a popular method, but that is one of just main places that you can go to be able to find retro or modern day video games. Again, you're going to have to work very, very hard to be able to try to find a place where you're going to be able to do video game collecting. There are many areas out in this world where you can be able to do it. So make sure that you use that map wisely, so that way you can find a way to get those resources, whether it's through other people or game stores or online, to be able to find the games you want. Finally, once you get through all three of those steps, the rest is pretty much simple. The final step is obviously to continue to build from there. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're continuing to build up on money, whether or not it's through your job or whether or not it's through some other method, like for example YouTube, and also make sure that you are getting a lot more more knowledge in regards to a console or a video game that you want to add to your collection. Because as I said before, there are a lot of consoles out there that are extremely popular and are going to be extremely hard to get later on. Now, if you were to ask me which ones are the cheapest ones to start out with, if you want to get a console or a game and start adding games into that collection right away, really, I believe the 6th generation of consoles are really the best method for you to do so. I believe the PlayStation 2 and Xbox games, those games and consoles they're almost literally dirt cheap. Obviously, because they are so popular from time to time, but also, wearing out method, those games along with consoles they are pretty much at the lowest that they can get in regards to prices. So if you are thinking about right away starting out with, getting a console into your collection along with some games to go along with it, the 6th generation of consoles is pretty much your best area to go into. And like I said before, once you're familiar with what you already know, that's when you can try to find a way to be able to build on that area. Like, for example, the 6th generation that I just talked about, or even the 5th generation of consoles, like for example, the PlayStation 1, which is in it, which of course I already have. And then you can build up on the 7th generation consoles, like the Xbox 360, the PS3 and all of that stuff. Or even, let's say, the 8th generation console, the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and then you get to the 9th generation of consoles. And you continue to build from there. Like I said before, everything takes time. So once you are able to navigate the first 3 steps correctly, you'll be able to find a way to be able to build on all your games that you already have, and then find a way with enough finance and enough wealth to be able to add more consoles and add more games into your collection. Again, it takes a lot of time. Nobody goes into this right away thinking that they're going to be able to build a massive video game collection with a whole bunch of consoles and a whole bunch of games within a short amount of time. Nah, it takes a very long time to be able to do it. The guy that has the most amount of video games ever for his collection, nearly 20,000, he took literally like years to be able to figure it out, not months and weeks to be able to do it. So everything takes a certain amount of time and a very long time to be able to do it. So make sure that you are following the first 3 steps carefully. And once you do that, it becomes a lot easier to go into step 4 and start adding more consoles and games into your collection from there. Video games is probably one of the most popular hobbies there is. Obviously, there are a lot of people, old and new, that really want to get into video games. Whether it's modern day video games in which they really want to get that new piece of technology into their lives along with all the games that come along with it, or somebody that just likes to live in the past, relive that nostalgia and get all those popular games that were out there for generations like the 5th and the 6th generation consoles and just go from there. Every one of them has done it through video game collecting, and that's really a hobby that's starting to grow a lot more with popularity every single year. But as I've said before, with a lot of consoles and a lot of games starting to become a lot more expensive, it's going to be a lot more difficult for everybody to get involved in video game collecting. It really takes a lot of money and a whole lot of knowledge of the particular industry, so that way you can find a way to be able to get all the games and consoles that you want and come up with the biggest video game collection that you can possibly have. So if you are an avid or a serious video gamer that really wants to get into video game collecting, always start out with a plan. Always start out with what you know and then continue to build on that from there. And make sure that you're spending your money wisely in regards to this. Make sure you have that limit, because if you don't have a limit and you try to spend as much as you can on a whole bunch of other stuff, you're going to risk running into financial trouble later on. So always make sure that you are following those steps carefully, and make sure that you utilize those resources, whether it's online, through people that you know, or any game store that's in the area, so that way you can find a way to get all the games that you want. It's a hobby that's not going to die down anytime soon. So if you're somebody that's an avid or serious video gamer and really want to get into collecting, now is the best time for you to do it. So make sure that you're following the steps that I explained today, and you'll be able to have the biggest video game collection that you can think of within a short amount of time. So that's going to do it for this video. I know there are a lot of people that are watching this that might already be video game collectors. So if you are one of those people, let me hear it in the comments below. How do you usually collect your video games? And more importantly, what was your plan to be able to start out with video game collecting, and how were you able to build on that from there? Please feel free to let me down in the comments below, and I'll be more interested in hearing about that. Anyways, that's going to do it for another video. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you'd like to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when my latest video is released. Comment below for future suggestions for all my videos, whether it's vlogs, projects, or challenges, you name it, leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to make them. And as always, follow me on my social media all the the links are in the description below. That's going to do it for another video. Hope you're all having another great day. As always, I hope to see all of you again in another video very soon. So long, everybody.